They're not sponsored at all. And even if they were. Bless up, family. How art thou? We're there. Thursday. This is Saturday live. Saturday afternoon live. Giving y'all an opportunity to come on in and share a moment with us. You know, Family Wellness Saturdays is at this point an institution in Atlanta. So keep the science. We're at the Shamba. That's the space. And we're inside the Oyun Marketplace. Outside is OnDaFarm. And that's the vibe. That's the angles of the triangle, as they say. Oyun Ministries and Marketplace. And OnDaFarm. A couple of them businesses that you're going to hear about, you're going to think about 3,000 years from now when you talk about the changing of the guard and all of that. What's up? How you doing? So like and share the video. We're going to talk about something very precious today. And you don't like to oversell things, but we ain't selling anything. We do have a lot on sale today. This is Family Wellness Saturdays, and we're going to share a lot of that with you. But in terms of, I was hearing a brother, Maladoma Some, who just made his transition. He was just talking about, when someone has to show a show of force, that's really because they're attempting to hide something, some great anxiety and all that way there. So come on in the room, It's a good time to get in your car and head on down here. While we're here with you on the air, we'll be showing you a couple of things that's in stock. And more than that, we'll be talking about the seasonal vibration. You know what we say all the time on the farm, life is a farm. So what does that mean? That means that the inherent principles of agriculture are the same principles of community life, And it's funny, as I introduce my guests, I see a storm brewing outside the window. I think of this thing. I don't know if Robert Mugabe said it, but it's a meme I posted the other day on Facebook. I saw it somewhere. That said, the reason you are poor is because when it rains, you think of sex instead of farming. So we want to make sure you keep on the right track. We don't think about farming right now. You might discover that you could find some principles that will help you to, sweeten up all of your life, all aspects of your life. Personal and business and spiritual and the whole way. So we're going to give you an opportunity to come in the room, and we're getting started in a minute.
You need help over there?
sidewalks for a second.
Oh,
So I was trying to, you was telling me to grab that arm on my left, and I stepped over it. Yeah.
Glad you didn't fall. That would have been ridiculous.
Second collarbone.
Speak it.
How y'all doing?
Doing good. How you feeling?
Good, good, good. All right. Oh,
I couldn't even really say it at first. I was
Guys?
like, okay, back to incense. They don't come back to the window when they try to get out. Alright, so that's that. You okay? You did well there. Oh my God. He said he getting senses back. You okay? You can see? You can feel? Yes, ma'am.
My hand is
maybe that doesn't make any sense. You're about to say, no, it doesn't.
Spontaneous creation.
mutation.
Spontaneous mutation. And creation.
That's fine. Yeah, seriously. They had it today.
You gotta keep that door closed, man. 'Cause the kitchen door. Yes, family. So as you can see, the Oba,
The year was
it's just how it works.
Which one is the year?
What y'all didn't see on camera is the storm did come that we just mentioned. And it is what it is, you know. And as they say, this this too shall pass, as they say. And as we're talking about nature, animated nature, I heard our sister Queen Yin of OU Ministries talk about one time she was teaching about the season of upheaval, you know, like sudden in the Ifa tradition they call it Oya energy, and that's the energy we're dealing with right now in general. Most of the people we know in our generation are dealing with that,
They started this summer, and I had a friend of mine.
you know, and so it is what it is. So I want to officially introduce our guest, and we're going to get into it, and we're going to start recording. You're tuned to WRFG Atlanta 89.3 on the FM dial, the Ancestral Rock. We air live on Thursday afternoon from 2 to 4. And right now we're in the OU Marketplace, which is a part of the compound called Shamba, cultivating ground. Outside, and probably where you are, unless you're somewhere else in the world right now, there's rain falling, hard rain falling. It was a weird kind of warmth this morning, you know what I mean? You know, and there's, tornado watches out for
The weather's
west
kind
of
of crazy, don't it?
Yeah, but you see, they say that the weather is a reflection of the people,
True.
and maybe we'll get into that today with our special guest. So we're here amongst family. We're here on Family Wellness Saturdays again, and we're grateful for the moment to be here. So I want to introduce our brother that to some of y'all on the radio. That he's no stranger. He's been a long-term supporter of our station and of our radio show since the days that we were on. You got spaces? All right, yeah, let me make sure. And so, what we'll be doing for those of y'all joining us live is pausing from time to time to share with y'all some of those spiritual tools, some of those wellness tools that we are fortunate to offer here at Shamba, both in the OU Marketplace and outside on the farm, right? And it's a beautiful thing when things just sync up naturally. You don't even have to make no effort. They sell themselves, so to speak, because our topic today is Christ consciousness. For those of y'all who saw the flyer, we posted a picture of a book, a very powerful book by a man called Sebama, Dr. Mwata Ashby, called The Mystical Journey from Jesus to Christ. The Mystical Journey from Jesus to Christ. And of course, we're in that season. We're in the season of Christmas, Christmas, right? We're in the season that people are getting, even people are here doing their holiday shopping. And that's part of the reality all over the world. And another part of the reality over the world is that there is that little bit that is shown on the surface, and then there's that deep root. Iceberg effect. There's that deep root that is not shown on the surface, that if the people of the world tap into that deep root, maybe there could be a whole different reality, and a new reality is evolving regardless, but you know what I'm saying? I know most of y'all out there know someone who is feeling like they're going through the ringer right now, the birthing process. We had Mama Saran Henderson a few strongs ago, talking about the birthing process. She is an experienced midwife for 40 years, I'm going to say 400 years. But we can say that too, because, we are our ancestors. And there's just been always this journey. There's always been this motion in creation to heal that which was broken. As soon as a wound happens in the body absolutely begins in the process of healing. So for those of y'all joining us on Facebook and Instagram, just like and share the video, and we're going to get into our conversation. I want to introduce our big brother. He's a Kemetic priest. He's a Baba, a grandfather, a husband. He's a son of the soil, as we said, and a soul brother. He's the founder of Ancestral Welding. I see he repping his thing today. We love that.
Free advert.
All right. Ausar Oba with us this afternoon. Oba, blessed Lord.
Rest in peace, man. How you doing?
Man, we give thanks for life.
Yeah, the comedic adoration.
Salute. So, man, when we talk about the season, I know you coming up in Guyana like I did. People have to be reminded all the time, because Guyana is a place, even if you're not Christian or even if you're not into that, the whole mythology it's like, that's a festive season. And people always, I remember hearing the pastors them say Jesus is the reason for the season. And then and then further along, and this is something that is a necessary reminder, of course, if you're looking at like we just talked about the iceberg effect. And then further along, we start seeing our sisters and brothers who studied and showed themselves approved, going deeper and saying, well, what is this whole issue of Christ all about? To the point where Sebama, Dr. Mwata Ashby, wrote a book called The Mystical Journey from Jesus to Christ. Yeah. So we want to cover that today. We want to talk about that in a nutshell, as we approach that season, as we approach that time period. where the world is celebrating. As we approach the winter solstice, and maybe there's a connection there. Maybe. I don't know. But I'm going to ask you, I will ask you to do that. So, again, welcome to the program.
Yeah, blessing. Thank you for having me.
I was just going to say you can use your outside voice inside it.
Oh man, I think people can hear me pretty clearly there. Giving thanks for life, giving thanks to the Invite Kofi into your beautiful space, Queen Yen and the whole family. I'd like to say special adorations to my teachers, preceptors, Master Bijam, Wada Ashby, as well as to the students in Atlanta here for Heru. I'd like to say special greetings. Actually, I was reminiscing, Kofi, several years ago when I came to Atlanta. Man, you were the person who introduced me to Atlanta, but the introduction, I think it came through 3 steps. Barbecue. What was it, barbecue? No, it was Javon at Mutana's. Mutana's, he said, man, I got somebody I wanted to meet. And so one day I was at Mutana's, and then you came and he said, there's your brother right here. And then introduced me to Atlanta, so I appreciate that. I was reminiscing on that up to yesterday.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, Javon, and what's his wife? Kia.
Yeah, man.
Kia,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, back in the day. So
that's when Life Essentials used to be right there.
Exactly. Life Essentials.
On the West End, the junction.
Things have changed. But in any event, man, I appreciate the invite as we in a special comedic season where we are appropriately discussing in terms of the book that you showed up, the Mystical Journey of Jesus Christ. And so, if I can get into that, well, not get into the book per se, but based on the questions you have pertaining to the book, but interlace it with my personal experience.
Absolutely.
In that context.
And what I love is that this is practical teachings.
Yeah.
So as we said, to lay the landscape. I saw something that really caught my attention today. A spiritual teacher, Dr. Beckwith from Agape Truth Center. Yeah, he's a good teacher.
Yeah.
Our brethren, Dr. B. Serious, come out from that same camp. But he was just talking about the polarization that's going on right now. And I'm careful, but I know in your company we can speak it freely because we know that we're not, we don't, what's the word I want to use? We don't subscribe to any aspect of lack or anything like that. We don't subscribe to anything. We're just talking about what is perceived as the reality around the world right now. He's talking about the polarization that's taking place is the sign of a dying paradigm, Like they say the dark is already before the noon, like when something is dying though, it's at its most dangerous
potential,
because it knows it's lunging.
Yeah, for something to born, something has to die. You know what I mean? So life is a continuum.
Right.
So
but just before, I just wanted to say, so in the context of that, I'm really grateful to have you here today because you're a man who gives practical wisdom all the time that comes through deep studies that you have gone through. Of life and the people like your teachers, them, that you mentioned, Saber Jah, Saber Ma, and all of them. I know people feel like in the ringer right now. And I saw another thing that was presented as a joke, but it said, look like Christmas this year look like it's the thought that counts.
They were getting tight.
But we say that jokingly,
but it's for real.
Knowing that the law of abundance is an immutable law.
Exactly.
Right? So we're putting that in context to say we're not going to hide from what the perception is, but at the same time, let's talk about what the reality is.
Yes.
Because life is, again, perception versus reality. So I want to
that's a good thing in terms of perception as it relates to it's just a thought that counts. Who is responsible for adding value to a particular offering? And I'm saying, if I go and buy you a sneaker for $500, right? And then on another tip, I come and give you an offering of kindness or whatever. Which one has more value? Of brotherhood. You know what I mean? We can't put it in tangible terms, what it means, but you can see the sneaker based on our conditioning. Oh, this is $500. And then somebody placed the price on that. Who said it's valued $500? So it's all marketing, essentially it boils down to. You know what I mean? So as it relates to this season, you know, actually today, I think at 4 o'clock in the island of Grenada, someone who was instrumental in directing my life, the passed away, so I think they're having a memorial service to them today, and I think the funeral is sometime next week. But Princess Wilson, greetings to Princess Wilson, and folks from BV, and her brother, who is my son's godfather, Bill Wilson, he was former coach of the Ghana national team. But I'd just like to give them a shout if they're going to be listening at any point in the future. But that particular sister, Princess, when I was maybe around 18, 19, put me in a position that I was uncomfortable with. But over the years, it's all where I'm at right now is based on what that person did so many years ago.
Planted a seed.
Planted a seed and created something in me that I have no clue. It's like she said, you know, I want you to be the head of this youth organization. I chose you. She just putting it together, and she chose me out of so many different people. And I think in my heart, I had a lot of brothers and sisters who were more qualified. But she said, I want you to be that person. And I've maintained that position for the next 3 years, 3 elections and everything else. But out of that experience, I say it in my heart all the time, for Heru, where for Heru is based on that past experience, interactions with different organizations. However, the most important thing, Kofi, is when it comes to the concept of leadership, right? Being able to lead oneself away from ignorance. You know, so in your practical life gives you the groundwork and the footwork for you to exercise certain fundamentals in helping the journey of the soul. And I know I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I just wanted to put that in there.
No, we're not jumping ahead at all. Let's jump right into the water, you know. Water flow outside. Underneath, we hear Phil Kuti talking about water, I got no enemy. So let me just dip in the water. You know, I come from a place in Buxton. We had Company Trench. I don't know the name of the trench them in BV, but
trench and them kind of trench.
Those are bodies of water that we got our baptism in many different ways.
Oh my goodness.
So we're talking about water now. I mean, and even as we talk about Christ, you know, one of the symbolic spaces in his life, let's put it, or events in his life, in terms of how it's presented to us. And we're talking about Jesus the Christ now, you know, or Yeshua, or whatever you want to call him, was when he was baptized. So this water has a continual thing there. So let's just jump into healing waters and see where we go from here. So just for starters, on a wider scope, help us to understand this whole concept of the journey from Jesus to Christ. Why would that even be something that, why do you think, I'm asking you, and I'm not even to speak for Sebajah, but why as a student, as a reader of the book, why do you think he would make it a distinction, or why would he find it important to draw that distinction?
Because I think the distinction is the most critical thing in terms of how we perceive that particular set of mythological stories. And I often say that I'm not hitting my Christian brothers and sisters out there, but I often say the context of how we perceive the concept of Jesus Christ now is one of the greatest downfalls of, quote unquote, not just African people, but people on the whole. Because what it has done, it has removed the original intent of the story and replicated it with something else that has people who are following, just following, where there is no kind of accountability, there is no measurement of your growth, there's no measurement of how the soul is more and more perceived as the go-to person in terms of your whole holistic perspective about life. Meaning that the concept of Christ has removed itself from a personal achievement in everyone to one person did it 2,000 how many years ago. Right? So the concept of the Christ is an attainment. Like just you go to school and you have degrees, you get a doctorate, a PhD. So the concept of the Christ is just that. When you go through these levels of in attainment until you reach the particular space where you have become the anointed. So the anointment happens personally. When we consider the concept of water in terms of Christian concepts, well, before I say that, let me, for people who maybe don't know much about me, I grew up in a Christian home, right? Different churches, because you know, when as in the village growing up, I went to 7 days, Baptist, Congregational, Catholic, because different interaction with different family members, friends, you may go to churches, a different thing. So ultimately, our longest tenure was in the Anglican church, where even, you know, performed as an altar boy, right? So I had, at a very young age, a kind of close uplook at the whole theology from a practical standpoint, meaning like layers, how things evolve. Because if you go to church and you are you're in the congregation, your interaction and your perception of who you're taking part in is different than if you're actually taking part in this particular ritual. Because taking part in the ritual, I'm saying as altar boys and whoever were functioning, or the deacons, I normally ask questions. Right? Okay.
And were those when you asked those questions, were they
blank wall? And that the blank wall is what instigated me now to say, well, I want to see what's behind this blank wall. For example, why do we ring the bell 3 times when we take in communion? Why do we have to walk around the cross in the church after, before, during, blah, blah, blah. Several different questions. And all the questions ended up answering, hush your mouth. Tradition.
Well,
it's just tradition.
It's just tradition.
Just be quiet.
Question
no question tradition.
Yeah.
Okay. So in essence, now that wasn't enough for my intrigue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So over time, as you ask a question, and it's interesting. I wrote a poem years ago. I think when I was in Miami or Brooklyn. But I wrote a poem saying these words in terms of, you normally ask a question, right? Consciously or unconsciously, and I paraphrase me, I can't remember the exact words, but this answer comes to you later down in your journey when you didn't even expect when this answer would show up. You know what I mean? So, first of all, the question has to be asked for even you to think about acquiring an answer. You know what I mean? So you have to have some kind of intent in where you're going with your journey, with your life. Okay? So anyway, in relation to the concept of the Christ and how we see it today and how it was performed, or back in our present day as we live. Nowadays everybody want to be rich, they want to be a basketball player, football player, want to have a big house. Times of the Christ or the hero or the Krishna, because the same principle, it represents people were going towards, trying to get towards a particular place, not material establishment or social status, but to become the Christ, to become Krishna, to become Buddha, right? So, in essence, and understand how I'm using those words, because all of them are titles. Buddha, Krishna, Heru, Christ, they are all titles. Muhammad, they are all titles of a particular achievement. Most religions, especially Western-dominated religions, have fall into that category where now this process has now removed itself from where everybody can attain this thing to one person having done this. So they put it now in a historical context instead of a perennial context.
That's a powerful thing. You just said a whole lot right there. But the essence of what I'm hearing you say, if you can clarify that for me, is that what you just said. Most these religious figures and great sages and prophets and everything that we hear about are basically a prototype. Which a prototype is something that's an example for all humanity to emulate and to attain. But how the majority of the Western and the modern religions have done it is set it where it's just like, this is not a prototype, this is just one person that did this. And you can't even bother try to be like them, but you must try to be like them anyway.
Exactly.
You can't bother even thinking that you're gonna be them. It's almost like moving the goalpost.
And as you were speaking, man, the thoughts are racing through my head, because apart from what is missing, so if now the church fathers, they have eliminated over time, eliminated the holistic ideology of what it represents and what it means. That means you have also removed the tools what was once there for attaining the Christhood. So now in modern day churches and mosques and temples, even if the teachers who are teaching they don't have the necessary tools to teach their parishioners how to establish, because first of all, then you're not even teaching that the Christhood is something we all can attain. Well, let's say we get to that point, okay, we change the dynamic and we say, okay, the Christhood is something everyone can achieve. But now you don't have the teachers to teach. So now we're so far behind the 8 ball, but however, don't think that we're totally lost, because as it relates to indigenous traditions, those tools are still there. Like in Buddhism, in Shitab Nether, and in indigenous cultures, those tools are there. And why it's important for those tools to be there, because listen, in Kemet, for you to become a priest, it took over 60 years of training. In Western culture, you can go to school 4, 6, 8 years, and you might graduate as a pope, right? So I'm saying now, I'm not hitting no one, right? I'm just sharing the difference. Right. So I'm saying now, when it pertains to this particular knowledge of Christ, because we need to probably cut it up some more, Kofi.
Yeah, definitely. We want to
because when we say the word Christ, we like it might put too outlandish for people. Well, let's break it down, right? The concept of the Christ relates to all humanity's journey and purpose in life, right? And this journey and purpose in life is to become one with your source. Now, if we understand that transcends whether you're male, female, black, white, that transcends that, right? In the biblical scriptures, I don't know if I said this on this program before, but in the biblical scriptures, in the book of Genesis, when it spoke about the concept of the Creator creating man, right? So we have this clay, right, that is formed, but this clay is physical. But until then, it has no life, no energy. And then the Creator breathed the breath of life into this particular clay, and it became in living. So what that tells me, from a metaphorical standpoint, is, unless you want to look at it literally, but metaphorically, metaphysically, is that we have two concepts, two entities, one material, one spiritual. But the material cannot do anything without the spiritual. So why is it in our daily lives we do not give glory or priority to the spiritual?
There's a long-lasting question there.
Okay.
I mean, it's a question that has been around for a long time. So I wonder, what is the snag? Because if generation after generation have to keep asking this question in the same way, it's just. I'm not even asking you to
Understood. Yeah. Well, the snag is, first of all, what has been there before and what has now been replaced. This ideology, this historicity, looking at scripture, right? Even Luciano heard the other day on saying something about the historicity of the Bible. Anyway, going into that. But the thing is that the technique has been removed, how we can get to that point. So first of all, the regular person or humanity have to know that there's more to life than what we experience. That's the first thing, right? And the other thing is that how now can you get to this particular experience? What are the tools necessary for that to happen? You know what I mean? And so that's why we end up going to an initiatic process. Because as it relates to mundane education, right? Kofi, as a child, when you start in school, you start with grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. Right. Until you get to the 12th grade, and then you want to go on to higher learning, right? Spiritual learning is the same thing.
The same thing.
And an even more adept kind of a way, because if, for example, if we're going to church, let's say we're going to church 2 or 3 times a week, right? Within that Sunday, right, or temple, within that Sunday, let's say 2 hours of worship, right? How much we spend on communion? How much we spend on singing? How much we spend on picking up collection? So out of that 2 hours, The rest of the time there is dedicated towards the priest teaching his parishioners, right? So basically, you're looking at maybe 1 to 2 to 3 hours per week where the teacher is trying to influence this particular parishioner, guiding this particular 3 hours, right? Out of that now, you as the participant in your congregation, you have to do a lot of work on your own, right? But this is what I'm trying to say. Out of those main 3 hours, for the average person who just goes to church and then go home and forget to been to church, the world is coming at you outside out of that time and influencing your decisions and creating an ideology. So for us,
so there's a civil war or a tug of war constantly going on.
well, it's a tug of war that you're losing because you only get in 3 hours of the direction that you need, and if that's the case. Because as I said before, in the regular church and whatever, we're not getting the right teachings to teach the parishioners, right? So even if within that 3 hours, you're juxtaposing that against the world that is coming at you 24/7 in your television, in your news, in your phone, in your social media. What is it? Is it telling you that you are the soul, that you can achieve Christ? No, it's not. It's telling you the total opposite. So guess that's what we're up against. And
But at the same time,
Yeah.
you're painting a very dim picture here, Obel. And if that's what it is, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But I wonder, is it necessarily that one needs the same amount of hours or just the fundamental seed to be planted? Because, again, if I look at the farming life, and I see the nature that any seed has, it's nature, which includes the ability to sustain itself through a storm that like just what came and passed already, or immense heat or immense cold and everything. There's something there within the DNA that will sustain this thing, even though environmental changes are always taking place. So I'm wondering, is it the amount of time that is needed to match the time that we're influenced by so many other things, or is it the right seed?
well,
Is that question clear?
it's clear. Consider this, right?
Some blessings. Come on in.
Consider.
I want to let y'all know something too. If you just take a pause, we're here. You can just consider this like a kind of street side conversation today, right? Because we're here. It's market day. Family's here. Come on in, sis. Welcome. And we are just, we're vibing up. Oba L is a person who is a cultural inspiration to me in many different ways, and I know he's an inspiration to me, to many of our people as well. So I just want y'all to don't be alarmed if you hear us turn around and greet somebody. Just set that context for you. It's lentil soup. Yes. Lentil with vegetables, collard greens, and sweet potatoes and everything.
Oh, okay.
So we're here just talking about life, in a very practical sense, and that's one of the million reasons that I appreciate OBL, because you don't have to be in a controlled environment to dispense the knowledge, and that's a beautiful thing, and that's really just a word to all of us out there. That's a sign, because you mentioned, you're a humble person, but you've mentioned many times, even since we've been talking today, about the fact that possibly we're not getting the right teachings. And I think part of it is that even in the expression, there's so many people that are out. Before I got here, I listened to Selma James, the wife of CLR James, talking about the revolutionary period in the 60s and 70s, where so many people wanted to take over the state just so that they can gain.
Listen to what I saw says.
What's the word I want to
This
use?
is what I saw coming in. And look, say,
Some kind of personal status instead of really cosmic change, So
Yeah.
I love that to say, we're here at the OU Marketplace. We're here at the Shamba cultivating ground. We have a special guest today, Ausar Oba. I'm just going to take a brief break before we get back into it, because we're talking about developing the self, we'll start at the very temporal, which is the flesh. And this teacher here, you're going to take us beyond the flesh, right? But this is some basic things that we have offered today at the market outside. These are greens, collard greens, kale greens. We got okra. Y'all call it okra. We call it okro in Guyana, right? We got sweet potato, right? Turnip. What else we got here on this thing? We got apples. All of this is locally grown, you know. This is these huge, juicy apples which come from apple country in Elgin. I go and source them myself, you know. We have orange and we have tangerine as well, you know what I mean? That's just to start the process. Also, our sister and brother Ishmael and Asantua, they create this beautiful product here called Jam Rock Sorrow. You know what I mean? We're on big up Intuitive Mama Botanicals, who creates this beautiful product here called Liquid Gold. This is Immune Booster, which is this right here. What you're seeing here is a 4-day amount, really. You know, four servings. Put it this way, because the recommended serving is 4 ounces, which is fresh turmeric, ginger, lime, lemon, and orange. You know, fresh squeeze. You know what I mean? So that's what it is. We're here on the OU Marketplace giving thanks for life, and we have a special guest today, Baba Oba L. So, Oba L, you were saying before the break, we were just talking about the fact that, as you were saying, you know, coming up, there were all of these. How can I put it? There's just a dichotomy of true knowledge versus the exoteric or the surface knowledge. And the surface knowledge is what is really pushed upon our people.
Yes.
So you were saying, even in your experiences in the church, when you asked questions about, well, why are we doing these things in this way, then it was just straight up like, well, a blank stare.
Yeah.
You can
Blank
please
stare
feel free to come
or-
on in.
Yeah, blank stare, or they would say,
No, you're
well,
not disturbing us at all.
you don't know, or it's traditional and things like that, you know. But as everything else, everything takes you through a journey. So that was appreciated because it helps to instigate my mind, right?
But what about the people who don't have that drive that you had to be able to act?
Well, they'll get it, but maybe not right now. You know, it's like we say the teachings is for everybody, but not for everybody right now. You know what I'm saying? So it's like when the 70 teacher is ready, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, something like that. So maybe sometimes I look at, like, even in popular families, and then you look at the children, right? MLK, Marcus Garvey, Brother Bob. It's not because you come out from the same lines or the same household that's necessarily going to do the same thing. So it's when you call, when it's your time, not even when you call, when you are ready, and when the evolution of your. This brings into play.
And that's a serious thing. I don't want to go down a tangent, but they always say about teachers' children and preachers' children, and sometimes
they don't come the same way.
And it's almost
although the seed is there.
But I wonder, is that something that is? It's almost like it's more challenging for them than the regular person who.
No, well, here is the fullness with that now. We got to put it in a wider context.
Let's put it in context.
You got to put it in context of the concept of who we essentially really are, right? And if we understand that we are the soul, and that means we are going through different incarnations coming into different bodies. So I may come into a family, right? However, this family, I come into this family, but my past incarnations, I got all of that, as part of my memory. But this is not the same thing that is relatable to the rest of my family members. It could be in my past life, I had a father and mother who were musicians. So when I came into this particular life, but that doesn't necessarily say that my kids and my spouse or my brothers and my sisters, they came from that past incarnation. So if someone comes into this life like a Garvey or a Brother Bob, and they exemplify certain attributes, it was unique for them. It doesn't necessarily say that the kids will follow suit.
Even though they have the same last name and the same
Name
address.
that don't matter. Because the name is not naming
So
the essence of who you are. It's just naming the outer exoteric aspect of yourself.
this is the Ancestral Rock on 89.3 FM. Greetings to those y'all joining us on Facebook and Instagram. We're coming live today from OU Marketplace, which is located at the Shamba Cultivating Ground, 3353 Washington Road. For those of y'all who are interested, we just showed you a few of the things that we have in stock. And Oba El talked about tools earlier. There's so many tools we call wellness essentials that are an animated part of nature that we use to help us along the way. But first and foremost, the most important thing is the teachings, the essence, because there's a reggae song that says, "Gonna have sense, I just the man with it behind it." So you can have something in your hand that is a tool of ascension for one person, and then for another person it's just a blank. It's just nothing because they don't know how to activate it. So we're grateful for the teachings.
That's and I want to go back to something you said earlier in terms of when you said it looked kind of dim. That's only in perspective or a particular opinion, because the teachings are there. If, for example, in the Christian church, I'll use that a lot because that's where I come from, right? In the Christian church, when you get baptized, it's supposed to say, well, okay, remove your sins, right? In indigenous religions and cultures, that's not the case. For example, in ancient Egyptian temples, there's a sacred pool in front of most temples that just like if you go to a mosque, you gotta wash up every time. So, in the Kemetic temple, there's this sacred big pool where, different images are in there with different deities. And you go in there and cleanse before you go in, but it doesn't necessarily wash your sins away. But it's an understanding that water is a process of purification. However, water also has to be looked at in its metaphorical sense, right? Because in the Bible, water is used in a metaphorical sense. When it says, in the beginning, it says, darkness moved on the face of the waters. We're not actually talking about water, we're talking about the representation of water as it relates to consciousness. Because just as how in the Nile, in the Happy Nile, where it represented the flow of consciousness, so too in the biblical scripture, when we talk about the waters, they're talking about consciousness. And you see, if a lot of Christians have questions, every Christian should have a question, right? And just to be sure here, we are not knocking Christianity. That's not what we're doing. We are sharing the understanding that we have, in the initial concept, we have what we call Gnostic Christianity. And Gnostic Christianity dealt with a whole different holistic approach of Christianity. But when it is watered down to where it is today, where there's a removal of certain elements to help you to resurrect the soul in terms of making it the ideal of one's personality, a lot of that has been removed. So for us to get to a space where we can start looking at life from that particular perspective, we need to historically start to understand this is what we used to be doing, and bring it forward so
it can ignite something
familiar. And a lot of pain that we feel in a religious context would be removed if we had this higher philosophical understanding what's really happening. You know what I mean? Some people say, how come the Bible said this one time and then in another place it says this? It contradicting itself. No, because you're looking at it from a literal perspective. That's why it's contradicting itself. If the Bible should be looked at metaphorically, then a lot of that misunderstanding would be removed. And I want people to make clear what I just said, because
that's a real serious point.
No, hear what I said, because I'm stating all the time I'm not knocking Christianity, and I just said the Bible, how it's looked at, is the challenge. So that should say that I'm not knocking Christianity, right? It's the interpretation, how it's done now, that's where the challenge is, you know what I mean? And a lot of people are leaving churches because they're not feeling fulfilled. Listen, my grandparents went to church. My mom went to church all their life. Died in the church. And wasn't even closer to the divine in someone who's actually implementing spiritual precepts in your life. For example, myself. You know what I mean? If my grandfather or grandparents would, I would love to sit down and tell them, this is what happened here. This is why you do this is why you do that. This is what, if you do this here, this is as far as you're going to go. This is an alternative because this is part of root, this is part of culture, blah, blah. So it's, in the spiritual practice, Ras Kofi, there is more evidence and more fulfillment of the practice, where you feel like something is taking place, where your perception is changing. You know what I mean? And using my life again. I come from, quote unquote, people in the streets and everything else, and if I could personally work on myself, where every 5 words is not an expletive anymore, or drinking and partying is not anymore, and still feel fulfilled, that should say something of the journey. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like somebody got to baptize you and then you start. Look at it this way. In the concept of baptism, right? I mean, you're talking about this Christ principle, you know, we can still get deeper. When you baptize someone and their sins are so-called cleansed, remember what we're doing, right? If you are trying to become a better person, what is it that makes you drink, smoke, do things that are, it's patterns, it's habit, right? It's a built-in mechanism within your mind frame, okay? So your mind have patterns that once you start doing this or you smell something, it actuates. So if you have a problem with drinking, right, and you become baptized, the baptism of itself does not remove the inertia in the mind, the patterns, the habits. So that is something that has to be worked on. This is why people go to Alcoholic Anonymous, AA programs.
You mean the outer ritual doesn't?
The outer ritual, it's a what you call it's the initiatic step for you to start this particular journey in terms of you purifying and you know what I'm saying.
And would you argue that also it's only an initiatic step that will get one in the proper direction if the intention is there?
Intention is pure. Intention is, and that is exactly what we're going to arrive at this Christ principle, the intention. Let's talk about it. What is the Christ principle in effect, right? Understand, I'm speaking from a comedic perspective. So the Christ principle would be synonymous with the hero principle, or the Greek sehoros, right? But when we start, what is absent from the Christian concept of the Christ principle as it relates to the hero principle is that even yesterday I was going through some videos, and we're talking about the 18 missing years of Jesus, right? What was happening in those 18 years? Okay. In the comedic concept of the Christ, there are several stages of this Christ principle. Just as if you're in school, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. So for example, when they've got different aspects of Heru. You got Heru the Elder, you got Heru Kudi, you got Heru Kentima, you have Heru Sekhmet, you got Heru Uwajit. You know, you got so many different, you got at least 26 forms of Heru. But what does Heru actually represent? Heru represents, going back to the intent, Heru represents the aspiration to become one with this particular source, this drive that is going to take you. But in the teachings of itself, that is not enough. That is not enough because Heru, this aspiration, this principle, is going up against the ego, which is Set. Now Set, which is the mind, which has already been conditioned over lifetimes to act a certain way, to think a certain way. This is what the aspiration is like David against Goliath. It's like David against Goliath. So now you got to start chipping away. First of all, you have to know the ideal, where you're trying to achieve. Then you start chipping away at the things that is preventing you from reaching your ideal. Because Kofi, if myself and you want to get to New York City, we can go straight to New York City or we can detour. What is the detour? The detour is nature.
How is nature a detour?
You said earlier that if you plant a seed in the ground, if you plant a seed in the ground, Kofi, and that seed is not taken care of, water, but we left it up to nature, right? Nature gonna take its time, and when that seed ready, it might even die. When the time is right, actually. But if you start watering a plant, doing your mulching thing, right? Paying attention, doing your chants over your plant, the plants that because the plant has a direct connection with a what you would call an example of its source. Meaning, I'm talking about the teacher.
So you're
Yeah.
saying that nature is different from what you're calling nature is different from, I don't know the word you use, the application, the active, consistent application of things.
Put it like this: nature's like trial and error, or do it until you get it right, rather than someone coming and teach you Kofi. This is it here. If you didn't go to you're trained to become a teacher, but you want to become a teacher, it will take you a longer time because you gotta read, you're gonna have to get ideas from here. They might get admit because they got something to show. So nature teaches you, but nature teaches you through its way. You can access the same teaching if a teacher comes to you and the teacher says, because the teacher's already gone through the process of trial and error, so you don't have to go through that. You're gonna have your own trial and error. You know what I'm saying? But the teacher comes and the teacher guides. And the teacher corrals you into where you need to go. If you go off, you're making too much of a right turn. Come back this way. Balance it up. You know what I mean? So in that regard, you are entering into a space of where you have a relationship with a teacher-student relationship or a teacher or student-disciple relationship, something like that, where now the teachings is directly coming at you from a source. This is the thing we consider to be successful in the path. There are three things, right? You need an authentic student, you need an authentic teaching, and you need an authentic teacher. Those three things got to come together for you to be successful on this particular path. You can be an authentic student,
authentic
teacher,
teaching.
teachings.
That's like an authentic curriculum
That's right.
and an authentic
The
teacher.
teacher. Those three things got to come together for you to be on the right path. You take away any one of them, any one of the authenticity, and it's not going to be successful.
So even if you have an authentic student and an authentic teaching, if the teacher is not,
Because if okay, Kofi, if you would like to learn calculus, and this is the textbook for you to learn calculus from, and the person who can teach you this calculus, if the person only can teach you algebra, what's it? Simple. You know what I'm saying? So all three got to come together. On the other hand, if you got an authentic teacher with a calculus book and the student is ready to receive, if you got an authentic student who can teach, the student is ready to receive, but the work that the student got to learn from is now up to par. So all three got to be working in relation to each other.
Clear. Clear. Our guest is Ausar Oba. We're here at the Shamba Cultivating Ground. That's the umbrella space for two businesses, OU Marketplace, OU Ministries and Marketplace. That's where we're in. We're actually in the OU Marketplace space right now, and then outside is the farm. OnDaFarm is the name of the business out there. We say life is a farm. So at the Shamba, we cultivate the soil and the soul. Just give me 1 second there. Like we said, we're here live, and we're having fun while we're reasoning about life. The soup we have today is lentil soup with sweet potatoes and a few different greens, mustard greens and collard greens. No, that's the basic number for summer. No. I think it's getting there. What, they need my information? You can give them a Ausar Oba is our guest today, y'all, and we're here at the Shamba until 6 o'clock today. Oba, we ain't gonna keep him hostage that long. You know what I mean? I got some new rooster too, you know, I wanna show you that. Two rooster and one hen.
Really?
Two rooster and one pen.
Oh wow.
Two rooster and two
living good?
and two. Living good so far. For those of y'all, we talking about nature here, right? There's certain laws of nature, they say. But you really intrigue me when you say, I don't want to leave the point there. We could go from New York straight, or we could take a detour, and the detour is nature.
Yeah.
Now, as a so-called nature boy, I would have said nature is the straight way, because that's the essence of the thing.
Yeah.
So if the detour is nature, what's the straight way?
That's what I said. The teacher.
Teacher is a straight way.
Teacher is a straight.
I get you. So when you're even okay, now I understand what it is.
Yeah, man, because
Okay, even when you mentioned you used that analogy, I didn't make the
you
connection.
didn't make
to
a
say
connection. Yeah.
that the teacher is a straight way.
Because
So that's why in the 10 some virtues of mind, they say, faith in the teacher's ability to teach,
Yeah, man.
faith in your ability to learn. So this teacher is always a human teacher?
no, in the teachings, okay, if you arrive at a space now, because I know my nature, people out there, I don't want you to get this wrong. Because if you are not in tune or attuned with nature, you need a guide. You know what I'm saying? You need a guide. But if you're in tune with nature, you know your plants, you can sense the wind, you're good. You know what I'm saying? So nature at that time is your guide and your teacher. Right? So because if you were out in the forest, you know what I mean? Anyway, I want to shed something on this thing here, Coop. The birth of Christ, or birth of Jesus in the Bible. Alright? When he was born, and I'm sharing with y'all metaphysical principles, right? When Jesus was born, and we do this ritual every year in church, right? We got the three wise men, we got Mary Magdalene, we got Joseph. But what do they really mean to you personally? And that's a question I normally put to students, is like, what does this, even if you are a Christian, what does that mean to you personally? Jesus there, Mary, Magdalene, Joseph, three wise men, star in the sky. What does that mean to you? I mean, we can relate it to the brother 2,000 years ago, yeah, historically. So in the Kemetic teachings, they tell you what that is. You know what I'm saying? So for example, in one aspect of Heru, in like Heru the Elder, when Heru the Elder is born, there are several principles who are present at the birth of Heru the Elder. One of them is a moon. Who is a moon? A moon represents the hidden witnessing consciousness. Now, these are all different aspects of your personality. It's not something out there. Right? So, for example, if aspiration is to be born within the personality, there's some other things, elements of your personality got to be present for this birth to take place. Right? Of course, a set is there, the mother. Right? A set represents your intuitive capacity, where wisdom is no longer garnished from a book or tapes. You're intuitively connected to that wisdom. So that there's another principle that is also present. We got Jehuti, who is present. And who is Jehuti? Jehuti represents your cosmic intellect. Right? Outside of that, we also have the two serpentine goddesses. The serpent power energy within the personality. Now, what does that say? And these serpentine goddesses are in different stratas of the journey of Heru, or even presenting themselves at different times in the mythology. However, at the birth of Heru, or at the birth of your personal aspiration, these particular serpentine goddesses represent the sublimation of your sexual energies. Right? So what I'm saying is that for your aspiration to have its full impetus, your sexual energy cannot be depleted. And not only that, now we're not even talking about the depletion of sexual energy, the redirection of your sexual energy has to be intellect. That's why the cosmic intellect is present, Jehuti, on several different levels.
So just to pause right there, because you catch many people's attention, including mine, when you talk about the sexual energy. And we're talking about a journey, the birth of Christ. And I want to make the connection. So what you're saying is that is a key aspect of our energy that we all possess.
Yeah.
But it has to be harnessed in the proper way in order for what they call enlightenment or anointment to really properly happen.
Yeah. Why sexual energy? Sexual energy is the most potent energy in the human psyche, right? But it's not so much a sexual, is it a sexual energy, but what comes along with the sexual energy that you need to corral it in a new direction, and this thing is desire. Because if you do not have control over desire, and not just in sexual activity, in anything, as a matter of fact, anything we do is sexual activity, because what is sex really but the interplay of masculine and feminine principles, right? So desire needs to be under control. So if desire is not even in your purview of kind of sublimating it, controlling it, then the birth of the principle of hero within one's personality is in a weakened state.
So desire is a cousin of intent, then, in that sense.
It's the same thing because your intent, based on what we're talking about, you have to have the desire to become the Christ, to become hero. And if that desire has to be fed emotionally, like a driver. Your emotions is the driver for anything you want to achieve, right? Emotions can be quote-unquote negative, positive, but they are the driver of anything you want to achieve. So that's why a few months ago, I think we were talking about the 4 parts of yoga, right? And I mean, there's so many things you have to put into play, into correlating and making this thing function as it should, because physically, the human body is the most dynamic and most creative machine ever built. So if that's the case, don't you think that we need to learn more about this dynamic? And here we're talking about a physical thing. What about the mental aspect of the personality of the human body? So we are way behind the 8 ball as it relates to dealing with this particular machine. And we don't want to even to go into the scientific basis of where they say you only use 10% of your brain and all that stuff. We know that we are lacking in a lot of departments as it relates to our continued evolution as humanity.
Straight like that. This is Ausar Oba joining us this afternoon here at the Shamba Cultivating Ground, the home of OU Ministries and Marketplace, and OnDaFarm. We're located at 3353 Washington Road in East Point, Georgia. We're also pre-recording this interview for WRFG Radio. There's so much going on right now. I know we're just scratching the surface. And to bring it forward even to locate this in the time that we're in right now, we're in the middle of December. We just had a thunderstorm and it feels like 65 degrees or so outside in the middle of December. And then here comes the sun again. You can see the sun smiling on my brother's face here. You know what I mean? A minute ago we had like something looked like a hurricane East Point came through and everybody had to jump outside and save the tent from blowing over. So we're in the midst of a lot of dynamic change, right? We're in the midst of a lot of dynamic change, and we're moving towards a time, even over to locate it a little bit even more specifically, towards the winter solstice. I know that there's an event coming up that I would love for you to share with us. That is an annual event that the Temple of Shetat Natir really sponsors around the winter solstice, but just the winter solstice in general. I can say that so many people I know. Now, let's even take it a little step further. As a Rasta youth, especially as a Rasta youth, but probably before that, but especially as I come into Rastafari, in my early 20s, my late teens, early 20s, I threw away all of this about Western culture, including so-called the New Year, what we call, January 1st was then referred to me as Babylon New Year. And how could a New Year happen in the middle of the winter? That's one thing, right? Because and now as a farmer, I ask that question to someone, how could it possibly be a New Year in the middle of the winter? Spring is the real New Year.
That's right.
And then, as I grow, I started to see again, I don't necessarily see January 1st, we know that's a Gregorian calendar and everything, but I could see how the winter solstice, for those of us living in this world, is the New Year, just as I see, or is a New Year, just as I see how the night, even in Islam, the new day begins at what they call Maghrib, at the sundown.
Yeah, sundown.
Our great brother Akebeka, the ascended master, I always talk about how you measure the day from midnight. So the spring is the beginning of the manifestation of the new, but what happens long before that is the newness. The spring is the gestation, Gil Scott Heron said it in another way. He said, you know, he was explaining his song, "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." He said, you know, a lot of people say, well, yeah, well, we seeing all these skirmishes on TV. What you mean the revolution will not be televised? He said, well, you've seen the skirmishes, but what you're not seeing, what's not televised, is when in the midnight hour, these people who are involved in these skirmishes decide that there's a time to make a change, the internal revolution. So I'm saying all that to say we're coming up on the winter solstice. I would like to ask you, generally speaking, we know we're speaking to a wide range of people with various views and beliefs and all this stuff. From Oba L's perspective, a man coming from Guyana, now living in Atlanta in a different land, give us some pointers, if you will, and as we begin to talk about the Unitarian Conference. Give us some pointers before we go into the conference about preparing for the winter solstice, please.
Decent question. Understandably, the winter solstice, December 21st. Sometimes it falls on the 20th, sometimes the 22nd. But you know, to answer that question, when I was in, what is the equivalent of third form here? There's like maybe 10th grade, 11th grade.
Third form?
Yeah, third form.
Yeah, it would be, that's a good question, because I left home in standard 4.
Grade.
Yeah.
9th grade.
Yeah,
somewhere there. Anyway, my geography teacher was telling me, he says, you know, the sun moves from north to south, not east to west. Third grade, third form, you know what I mean? And he said the apparent movement of the sun is east to west. So since then, I've always been in my head. He's the only person I ever heard say that since back in the day, you know. But now that, and we live in the Caribbean and South America, we're accustomed to 2 seasons. We never get into too much of the solstice and things like that, or summertime and, you know, maybe winter time. But then anyway, in coming to this particular part of creation, where now the winter solstice is something that is advocated on. And as it relates to connecting to indigenous cultures, our science is so beautiful, man, because everything that is connected, whether it's the scriptures, whether it's in counting, whether it's in mathematics, whether it's in architecture, everything is conceptualized through a whole process of observing the universe, right? So in the winter solstice, when the sun is at its lowest peak or its weakest point, where we have the longest night, and then the sun is traversing between the tropical Cancer and the tropical Capricorn, our ancestors figured out a way that energies operating in the universe at a specific period of time is also correlated that energies that is present within the psyche of the human being and the person. Right?
Say that again, like they say in the dance, pull up.
Well, they conceptualize that energies that are prevalent in the universe at given times is also present in the human psyche.
So as above, so below.
As above, so below. Exactly.
So when we say life is a farm, for instance, there's another example of that.
Right.
We're not crazy. We're onto something.
You're onto something.
Okay.
You're onto something. So essentially, when we talk about in terms of the celebration of the birth of Christ around December 25th, and a lot of people may know of this, but for just those who don't know, the sun at the 21st of December, the sun stops that apparent north to south movement, and it stays still for 3 days. And on the 4th day after that, it begins its journey in the other direction, which is actually happens to be on the 25th of December. And so that is what early Christianity used to utilize and connect it to the myth to say, well, this is how, you know, the birth of this particular brother at this time, blah, blah, blah. And so from that time to now, we have been led away from
There you are. Come on.
the initial intent of connecting a cosmic rendition of something that is going on within the personality.
Initial intent. You keep going there, and I don't want to stop you, but I sticking a pin in my mind because I want to unpack that a little bit later. Please go ahead.
So, based on the removing of the goalpost, right? I also make another analogy with people climbing the ladder of success, but you realize the ladder is on the wrong house when you get to the top. So I'm saying, see that the goalpost has moved. We are. Listen, Kofi. People who go to church, good people, they have the right intention. But if, as we talked about before about this three-way process, if the teachings or the teacher is not in place, that means the people are being incorrectly, and you can't blame them for that. You know what I'm saying? However, when it comes to the process of you understanding that this Christ principle is within you. So when we're talking about the solstice and the birth of the sun on December 25th, it is also a birth of a sun within one's own particular psyche that needs to be worked on, and the right principles need to be used and watered so that this principle can activate and be eventually expressed as it needs to be expressed.
We're going to take a pause for a call. This is a welcome. Yeah, you can feel free. We just hear a reason, so don't.
I know, I've seen that, so I didn't want to interrupt.
No, y'all
Wow.
good. What's up, homie?
You're just going to go right in there.
My name is Elias.
You on camera? You know you on camera now? Welcome to
I'm
the show.
Mickey. I'm Mickey.
You're
All right.
Mickey?
It's Mickey.
You're silly, son.
All right, man.
Come here, son.
So yeah, we're here at 3353 Washington Road, East Point, Georgia. Family Wellness Center. Make yourself at home. Man.
Okay, I appreciate it.
We're here speaking with Ausar Oba, and he's just dropping megaton bombs. So there's an internal sun which needs rebirth as well.
Yeah.
And you're calling this an internal sun. Just for the sake of our viewers who that might feel a little too esoteric, a little too way out there, give it another name. What is it that you're really referring to?
Your aspiration.
Your aspiration. So your internal
Yeah,
aspiration.
it burning. Your aspiration got to be burning like a fire.
So this is why a lot of my people, I know our brethren in particular, but a lot of people, it's becoming more of a popular thing. They say at the winter solstice, I'm shutting off Facebook, I'm shutting off Instagram, and I'm creating my plan for the next 12 months. That makes perfect sense then,
Yes,
because you're
yes,
talking
yes,
about your
yes.
aspiration.
The aspiration. Kofi, man, listen. You see the story, and maybe one day in my ensuing years, I could do some like correlating writing on the Bible. 'Cause I think about a lot of my brothers and sisters who I grew up with, and there's so much I can share with them to help them really understand. For example, right, in the hero story, and I'm talking on this because the hero story sheds a whole broader light on the Jesus story. It helps you to understand it more, right? So in the hero story, where was Christ born? Where was Jesus born? He was born in a manger, right? And he was born in a manger because they couldn't find a room in the inn, based on the story, right? And so they went, and the baby was born in a manger, away from the cold and everything. In the Heru story, Heru was born in the papyrus swamps, away from his uncle Seth, who was trying to kill him. Moses was born in the reeds. Same story of Moses, same story of Jesus, right? So, in any event, what they're talking about, I'm talking about aspiration. When aspiration is born, it is most time born in the most treacherous condition, adverse condition, because people don't change until something happens, until they're going through a crisis. So, man, I'm done. You're going in a car accident. I'm done because I was drinking a drink. I'm done drinking. Some crisis, right? So this aspiration now, although the aspiration may be not the highest ideological aspiration, but it's an aspiration anyway. So, man, I'm going to stop eating meat. I'm going to stop drinking. Whatever. But this aspiration to know something more of oneself, to gain the knowledge of self, is the highest of all aspirations. And it needs to be shielded and protected from Babylon, quote unquote, from Seth, from the ego, right? So in the story, Seth is chasing after a Seth, which is Pharaoh's mom, to get her, right? So she, in her wisdom, is protecting. So intuitive wisdom protects the aspiration, along with the other principles who are present, like the cosmic principles.
So just like Mary in her wisdom and Joseph and all that, they received the message to say, go and hide in Egypt.
Go and hide in Egypt, or wherever you're hiding. But what they're talking about is the aspiration that needs to be shielded and protected. right? So it's not. So we're trying to move the story from historicity.
No, that's
to-
why I'm saying
yeah.
even symbolically using
Yeah.
that same language. I wonder what Egypt represents in that sense, because I mean that's a, well, you know, you see you make me want to dig all kind of rabbit holes.
Yeah, and there's something else with Egypt as it relates to the Bible, right? When it comes to Egypt and Christianity, based on one story and one story only, Christians have, especially quote unquote African Christians, we have thrown the whole of Africa outside of, because of the Pharaoh wouldn't let his people go. So I sometimes use that to say, well, okay, if we're talking about Egypt, over 7,000 years of Egypt, out of that one incident, if it did happen, but let's say it did happen, that one incident, you're using that one incident to castigate the whole of Egypt is like saying, using one presidency of the United States to account for all of the United States presidencies. You know what I'm saying? So in that regard, we have been whitewashed out of paying attention to Egypt. And that is really the beauty of our lineage lives. Right? So using the concept of the Christ principle as it relates to Egypt. So you're asking the context of what Egypt is being used in. In biblical scriptures, Egypt was always known as things bad, go to Egypt. Famine, Egypt always had this storehouse.
From Joseph to Moses to
All of them. Benjamin, everybody.
Jesus.
You know what I'm saying? So in that context, Egypt has to be looked. But however, that is not normally pushed. What is being pushed is Pharaoh holding on and his people and not letting his people go. And there's no evidence of that in Egypt history. In Egypt. So, okay. So we're saying now, we're talking about this aspiration that needs to be shielded after it's birthed. Right? So this aspiration in its infancy as a child, right? How can you relate the concept of a child in your home and you relate it to aspiration in your own personality? What do you have? You got your own grandchild now, can't walk, you got to hold his hand, you got to feed him with a spoon, you got to clean him. That is your aspiration, Kofi. There's everything you got to water your aspiration, you got to take care of it, you got to protect it. And this is the beginning of the journey of becoming the Christ.
That makes perfect sense in so many ways, even in terms of the folk knowledge, I would say the children are the hope of the future. So when you drew that analogy of raising a child or raising a crop in the garden, your aspiration. That's why farmers have to be some of the most faithful people.
Gotta be, man.
You have to be able to see the unseen.
Depending on elements and elements not showing up to help you, you know what I mean? And you gotta put a lot of faith into that, you know? So it's, my thing is, Kofi, is how can you
What's up, man?
use...
That's for you.
Candy cane. You need help in opening it? You want Baba open it for you? You want me to open it for you?
Yes, family, and we're gonna actually, as we're going through that, we're gonna take a break just to show you a little bit more of what's going on at the Oyun Marketplace, and say thank you. We're here with Ausar Oba. There's a few things I forgot to mention that's from the OnDaFarm Earth stand. This type of year and all type of year, we in the South, it's never not the season for hot sauce. So we got the fire roasted habanero hot sauce right here, and we got the Vidalia onion and Georgia peach hot sauce. All of this is locally produced. We go up to Apple Country and get these. And we have some hot sauce from one of our neighbors from Trinidad, buddy. And she just makes some hot sauce from our peppers.
Really?
That we're gonna go and they're gonna go on sale next week. Serious thing. And Sunborn orange hot sauce as well, right? So we're here until 6 o'clock and you can come through. And again, these are foods that feed the temporal body. And because of the nature of the foods that we attempt to ingest, they don't just stop, they don't just have an effect on the temporal body, right? They don't just have an effect on the physical body. Because we realize, and I know Oba can bear witness to this, that because we are in the flesh, we are spiritual beings, of course, having a human experience. But because we're in the flesh, in order to optimally even have that spiritual experience, you know, we need to be able to keep this which is a radar, which is an antenna, whatever you want to call it, in optimal condition.
Exactly.
In optimal condition. And that, I suppose that's why the yoga and all of these things come into play.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I want to talk
Because
about
if we're
that
just
today.
if we're just in the ethers, then we would need some of those practices, right?
Yeah, and actually that's why I want to mention something on yoga today because we're in Atlanta and we're in Basu Nation, and shout out to Ausar Oba. As it relates to the yoga, yoga is like a ritual to your story, right? One concept of yoga, because when you are doing the series of postures in yoga, you're emulating the cycle of creation from the inception to its sustenance and to its ultimate demise, right? So it's a cycle. So when you start with the journey around all that stuff, the sun comes out, and then the sun is sustained, and different things happen, and then you go back into your mommy posture on the closing, right? So the yoga is part of a ritual to your myth. Just like if you're Muslim, you would say prayers 5 times a day. That is a ritual to your myth. However, the ritual and the myth leads you to something else, which is the mystical, the mysticism, right? And if, just like in Western religions, if all you are doing is reading your scriptures and practicing your rituals, and you're not doing anything else, you're selling yourself short, right? So in reference to yoga as a ritual as it relates to the myth, right? You just don't just get into the mythical concept of the posture. You also have to have the mystical understanding of the posture as it relates to your own personality, your own evolving.
To make it really meaningful.
Meaningful, you know what I mean? To make it meaningful. Right. So that yoga, like for example, meditation, right? Meditation has to be also taken into context with the overall ideology, right? People say, okay, I just want to meditate second we can, right? No, you're meditating, so you're gaining entry into your inner sanctum. You know what I mean? And understanding, because understanding in meditation, there's a philosophy that is in our teachings to guide you through meditation. Meaning, not telling you how to meditate, but telling you in this particular realm that you're going to find yourself, what you're actually experiencing. And I have names for them, just like how you may have names in the physical world. In this mental world, there are names for the mind when it enters, or states of the attitudes where you are, that our ancestors had names like the Yanutep, like the Sekatep. You know what I mean? Different names for different stratus within the mental landscape.
So when it says states of beatitudes again, we're talking about the mystical journey of Jesus to Christ. The beatitudes in the Bible.
The Beatitudes deal just like aphorisms, not injunctions, but instructions telling you how to conduct your life. You know what I mean? So in the mental framework, when you're like meditating, there are guiding tools as well for you within the mental landscape that you need to be aware of. Because as you go deeper, and that's why a teacher is important, a teacher is going to help you to maintain and help you to understand what is actually taking place, because if you don't know what you're doing, you can become scared, you can become fearful of what you may experience. Not to say people should be fearful of what happens in meditation, but just like anything else, you know, like when you go into trade school, the first thing they tell you, don't put on the machine if you don't know how to take it off, right? Don't touch something if you're not sure if it's hot, right? So it's the same guidance that we need in this particular aspect of our journey that is going to be beneficial for that particular aspect of the journey.
That's a powerful, because you're dropping a whole lot there. When you see the aphorisms, you were talking about the Beatitudes in general, but then that word sparked a question to me about the Bible and this ministry, which was called the Sermon on the Mount of the Christ.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and as you're saying, these are aphorisms, but even in these various mental states, You know, like you said, blessed are you, and you know, blessed are the pure in spirit,
Yeah.
for
Okay.
they shall see God.
Yeah.
Blessed are the poor and meek, for they shall inherit
the
the earth.
earth.
Blessed are you when men shall revile you, and you know. So I would like to, in the journey to where we're going, to kind of zoom in on some of those for a minute, just as to relate again, as you've been doing all afternoon, the esoteric understanding of this versus what is just on the surface.
Right.
That particular thing gives you an opportunity to get a little deeper than the surface anyway, because it deals with emotional states and everything.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
yes. And I'm glad you brought it up because Kofi, in a spiritual practice, you deal with psychology. Psychology, we even call it spiritual psychology, because in the spiritual essence, you are learning how to work with the mind, right? And we know that this mind is vast, this mind is capable of so many different things. And if the mind can be a tool, how can you work with a tool and you don't have no knowledge of it? So a lot of times, you know, even when we deal with psychology, right? Especially when it comes to like behavior. For example, anger. Let's take a look at anger. In the Kemetic teachings, we deal with everything piecemeal. You know, the emotions, the anger, the envy, hatred, because these things carry with them a lot of inertia, a lot of force. So, for example, if you want to deal with anger, how do you confront anger? Like, for example, people who can afford it might go to a psychologist and say, help me break down this anger, I have anger management problem. And the psychologist might tell you, do this, do that. So from the spiritual concept, there's also ways and means how to deal with certain maladies of the mind, like the anger, the hatred, the envy, the jealousy. And there may be an aphorism that covers it all. But then, like when we start to get deep into the teachings, like we go into like teachings of Sage Amenimopi or Sage Annie, where these scriptures are now being more further distilled to help you understand how to really relate and deal. Because the toughest thing, Kofi, is to master yourself. You can go and get 2, 3, 4 PhDs and do it. The toughest thing is to master yourself, man. Master anger. How do you master jealousy? You know, if you got somebody like a girlfriend or a boyfriend, whoever, and somebody trying to get at her or get at him, and this jealousy thing is coming up in you, how do you manage? Because that is what you would call I'm looking for the right word, but for us to reach this purity, those things got to be absent. The anger, the hatred, the jealousy. The overall concept to help us be moving away from that is that we are a spirit, right? And we're not essentially flesh and blood. That's the overall thing. But to get somebody to really live life as that, you're going to have baby steps to redirect the mind and the thinking to move me away from, I was born a particular time, I'm live, and then I die, to now telling someone that the essence of who you are is truly eternal. And a lot of times we throw these words around, right? But what does it really mean to live life like that? And that does it work that from a teacher can't teach it, you got to put that work in for yourself. And the only way that you can put it working for yourself is through experiences. If you don't have an experience that deals with envy, that deals with hatred, that deals with jealousy, how can you work on it? So some things that we call quote unquote negative are just opportunities for you to work on something that's relatable for you. You know, vexation and desire, right? For example, if putting it in a very, very mundane, and somebody loves Burger King, Mac, whatever it is, right?
It's two different places.
You see, I get tired. I ain't been there so long. So if you have a desire, right? Let's say you're driving past, I'd say, okay, Chick-fil-A, and this smell of Chick-fil-A catch your nose. It right away instigates certain essences within your personality. You start feeling your mouth start watering. So now you have this desire to go after this particular thing. But in the meantime, 2 weeks before you say, man, I want to change my life. So you're gonna be tested. Do you really want to get off of this thing? So at that particular time, two things happen. If you make the decision to go inside of there, you just give in to the desire. If you didn't go in, you just added a little bit of momentum to your fire. And it's that simple. When different opportunities come up for you to take part, which you know you're not supposed to take part, but then either you give in or you didn't give in. Either way. You know what I'm saying? So, and that is a journey.
Right.
That's why spirituality is so like, people don't go into spirituality whole scale in terms of en masse because you got to work on yourself. It's more easier and more comfortable to people just to go to church, show up, and then come back home and then forget about it until next Sunday. That's easier. But if people want to work on themselves, like I was laughing when it came to the mirror race, right? When somebody said, Miss Moore should get into up, she's gonna shut up Miss Strip. I don't know who said I think that is true.
Boy, everybody lost their mind when they were
So I'm saying, that desire,
right,
that was enough to let people go the other way.
right. They said, no, sir. We're not. No. You're right. It's true. It's funny.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So life is interesting, man.
Yeah.
And I'm still journeying, I'm still learning, still traveling, a lot of things I need to master. But when I look from where I came from, man, to where it is today, I'm like, man, I thank heavens for my teachers, man, that, and teachings that can get me to a place where certain things, I'm going to tell you something, Kofi, like, how you know that you can master other things? For example, vegetarianism, right? If somebody used to eat a lot of meat and is stopping the vegan or vegetarian, that's one thing you conquered. That's a plus in your cap, right? Hanging out, partying. If you overcome them things, that shows you have the capacity to do other things. You know what I mean? Cursing. You know what I mean? I used to make curse word colorful, man. I could and when I know you like paint your picture, man, let me tell you, man.
Yeah, you and every other guy in these.
But in any event, and so that gives you that momentum, that encouragement to say, you know what, okay, where's my next thing? What's my next thing? Envy, jealousy, covetousness, greed, you know what I mean? And here was the other thing now. Someone on the outside looking at you now, right? And they're assessing your growth. Let's say 10 years ago, every day you drink 2 6-pack of beer, right? Then between that 10 years, you start working on yourself. So now, you're drinking 1 6-pack a day now, right? And you tell your sister or your family member or say, no, man, get half of this beer. So, you see you drinking Heineken, right? But then, comes and visit you a year after, you down now to 1 Heineken, 1 6-pack a week instead of 1 6-pack. But the day when he visited you, you were taking part in 1 Heineken, right? For a week. And he looks at you, he said, in his heart, probably says, yeah, I thought you said he was stopping. Look at him drinking. But they don't see the work that you're doing.
They don't see the progress.
They don't see the progress. They just see where you are then. You know what I mean? So people judge you and assess you based on that. And then, your journey is based on your personality type. Some people's personality type are much slower. Some other people's personality type, pop, they can get it done quick like that. So some people might say, yeah, man, he just started the other day and look where he is. Well, you've been in the teaching so long and look where you are. So people, they use duality and time and space conditioning to assess a spiritual process, and you can't do it like that.
Right. Yeah, very, very important point. We're here with Ausar Oba. As we see, Oba gonna do 2 things. I got a couple of things that I want to look at this marketplace. To say, I won't even say to test you, but I want you to bring no, here what happened, no, because you've made it very clear certain fundamental principles of the human life, the spiritual life, and the human shape. You know what I mean? One of them is purification, for instance. You keep on going back to that.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But there's other things as well. You know, beauty plays a part. The appreciation of beauty plays a part in our development as well. You know, the cultivation of patience and other things. But before we get to that, I want to ask you to talk about the Nigerian conference.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, just tell us about what's coming up with the Nigerian
Yes,
conference.
yes, yes. The
Then
Nigerian
we're going to
conference.
do a little summary because
The Nigerian conference is from December 29th to January 2nd. Is our annual Nigerian conference. We normally keep it once a year. And it's not just like a conference. Conference sounds kind of Western. It's more like a retreat. And we also include in there like the Goddess Festival. And the Goddess Festival, because around that time of year, they are the birth of several deities and divinities that we incorporate into that time of year. So it runs from December 29th to January 2nd, and sponsored by the Sima Institute of Yoga Temple of Shitapnetter, where our main presentations is going to be by Dr. Muad Ashby, Sivama, and Sibaja, Dr. Karen Clark Ashby. And the theme for this year's conference is part 2, starting from last year. It is the mysticism of the Asarian resurrection. And as part of our retreat / conference / Goddess Festival, you know, we partake in rituals, postures, meditation, of course the philosophy, and then some musical renditions. We also have a children's program that is incorporated within the festival. So for contact information, you can go to simplytoegyptianyoga.com, and there will be a link there to take you to the website. The email is natarianconference@gmail.com, natarianconference@gmail.com. Kofi should probably have a flyer on his Facebook page at some point. But any questions, there's a phone number on there you can call for any questions. And by the way, it's being done virtually this year, so regardless of where you are, you can participate. We normally keep it in-house.
so it's not going to be in-house.
It's going to be virtual.
Okay.
So regardless of where you are, you can partake, and so the fee is a lot more nominal. You can partake. When it comes to the retreat / festival / conference, as part of the experience, it's like a night and day experience. Virtually, it's going to be a bit different, but I can remember in past conferences, when you come out of that experiences, if you are in there 5-6 days without partaking in the world, and we used to keep it in Atlanta, where we used to be in the mountains. So you come out to the mountains after 5 days, and then the first sign of another car, like wake you up, say, man, you're back to this, you know what I mean? So, but for those 5 days, when we are submerged, and that submerged is a word I'm using intently. You are submerged in the teachings. That means we take a dive, and we take part, and we leave our egos at the door, and we take part in the elements of the teachings for that particular time. So then we have an on-site chef preparing raw food, so you don't have to go anywhere, and you don't have to worry about when you're gonna eat what, things like that. So the experience is very wholesome, and I would encourage anyone, if this is a path that you're interested in, even supporting something that is within the community, come forward and utilize your time. Well, I know around that time is the Kwanzaa and Christmas, but the teachings is going to be there in your living room. And what's interesting about the virtual space, because we did it for the first time last year, is that people who participate, you can create your own space in your room. So like when your camera shine on you, people have different aspects of their representation of a temple space. So that is very warm in that regard.
Beautiful. So that's one of the things that I can say about this thing, and that really illustrates so many of the principles that you brought to life today. And I'm really grateful for you. As you know, and people who just joining us, we're tuned in with Ausar Oba. He won't call himself that. Ras Kofi talking, master teacher, because he has a great gift of bringing things that may seem complex and making them very practical for us. And he comes from a space of love and devotion. This is clear. If you ever sat with him, this is somebody who don't espouse these personal aspirations of trying to get well known and popularity and fame and titles and everything. He understands that. So I'm grateful for you. A big brother, you know that, but just speaking that publicly as well, So one of the things that you have brought out is about how the journey, the process is the reward. And so even though things may seem negative and adverse, they're actually helping us to develop another part. And even as you speak about the virtual space, I think that's one thing that's come out on a global level out of this reality.
Yeah.
In some ways people look at it like lockdown and this and that, but now because of the, it's almost like when you shut off one sense, you heighten other senses.
Yeah, definitely.
So globally now, we're able to come together on another level,
Yeah, that's interesting because of that, because our class online, in my personal class, I was able to connect with people in BV.
Yes.
And bring them on the call, what I mean? So that's interesting, man. One door closed and
That's how the thing said.
as I say, if I can say certain things about this concept of Christ, because I think it's important in terms of intel. The most important thing for anyone, and I stress this in my personal class, is the perception of your reality. Two things: perception of reality and identity. Right? The perception of your reality is going to be evolving out of your identity, or who you see yourself as. Right? And because we live in an amystical society where the world and the egoistic notions is everywhere around you, it behooves us even more to be more guarded, right? As it relates to your identity, if there is nothing else, let that be your goal in terms of seeking the identity that is the preeminent aspect of your personality, which is the soul. Even if you don't understand it, have that at the back of your mind, and I need to get to this position where I'm seeing my life through the eyes of the soul. So when you say Ausar Oba, Ausar is an initiatic title, right? So when you become initiated in a particular dynamic of it, and you've been given the title Ausar, that means you are engaging in the journey of seeing your life through the eyes of the soul. And that is a major impetus, because
As opposed to what in the popular world?
Ego. As opposed to seeing your life through the eyes of ego. And what does the ego involve in? Duality. I was born at this time, I'm going to die at this time. The ego involves I'm a male. The ego says I'm female. The ego says I'm African American. The ego says I'm Chinese. The ego tells you all of these things about yourself except the soul. It never says you are the soul and you have domination over this. The ego tells you everything. So the perspective along with your identity is the two most crucial things that any human being, I don't care where you're from, what you do, the most two crucial things to put in perspective, in the right perspective.
That's what they say. That's what they call knowledge of self.
Knowledge of self, your identity. Because if you're not perusing life through the correct identity, every other thing else you're going to do is falsehood. Everything else. I don't care if you got 10 degrees, you got $10 billion, everything else is untruth, like anma'at, not going towards truth. So identity, perspective, or perception, two most key things in anyone's life.
There's something powerful you mentioned in terms of you drew a parallel between Moses, Jesus, Heru, in terms of where they're born and how they and the circumstances, from the mythology to the esoteric, to the metaphysical aspect of it. You know what I mean? And I feel that was very powerful. Not just even to place them all in Northeast Africa and everything, but beyond that, because that can get into something where we just focusing on the
on a geological location.
But we're talking about the essence, the internal.
So now, internally, as I mentioned before, where when Heru is born, and the other aspects that gotta be around, that gotta be present. So, like your aspiration is gonna make you go to conferences. Your aspiration is going to make you not stop at the Chick-fil-A. Your aspiration is going to make you go and get something wholesome to eat. Your aspiration is going to move you away from the wrong company. There's so much things the aspiration is involved in because you have the higher idea.
And you said aspiration, that basically that son, that child, that Christ child, or
Yeah.
that prophet child, that's what that represents,
That's
as
what
aspiration.
right.
So when you're reading the story of Moses in the Bible, or you're reading the story of Christ and all these things,
Yeah.
you're thinking about, you're really talking about aspiration.
Exactly. So look at the sun. We're talking about fire, right? Look at the sun. In the morning time, isn't the sun appear cooler? Then it's just worth it, quote unquote. But as it grows, as it goes up in the sky,
Hotter than fire, man.
so that is what happened to your aspiration. As the aspiration grows, but the aspiration cannot grow the aspiration by itself. I mean, the aspiration has to be water protected, shielded. Because where the aspiration is coming from is like a magnet, trying to pull it back down. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't have the anti-gravitational aspect to deal with that pull, you're gonna get stuck. Because listen, if you said, okay, I want to stop drinking alcohol, but you're still hanging out with people who drinking alcohol, it's gonna make it harder for you to do it. You know what I'm saying? So now, as Jamaican brothers say, you gotta take care of yourself, right?
Yeah, you gotta
So
take care
you
of
gotta
yourself.
take care of yourself, right?
You gotta take care of yourself. Anyway.
So you gotta take care of yourself.
Yeah, you got a big tune in my head now, Ras Shiloh. I'm the heathen. We have to take care of yourself. Yeah, big tune.
So now the marshes, the papyrus swamps, the manger,
Yeah,
the cave,
yeah.
where some entity was born as well. Muhammad, I think, was born in the cave. All of those represent the same principle of when aspiration is born, it is born in very tedious conditions. And so to take it out of that Tupac sees the rose of growth from concrete. So now you gotta be able to, and what did the set do? She had to run. She had to run, she had to hide, she had to do magic and all kind of things just to get away. So you got to take care of yourself.
You gotta take care of yourself.
You know what I mean?
Ausar Oba is with us, y'all, in the closing moments of our reasoning here at Family Wellness Saturday. We're live inside Oyun Marketplace. Again, Oyun Marketplace and Ministries and OnDaFarm is two companies that make up this umbrella called Shamba, Cultivating Ground. We're here every Saturday, and we had family coming in and out. This is Family Wellness Saturday. You know, we're grateful for all the children coming through and really nicing up the place. We love to be in a space where children love to be.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Real talk.
Wholesomeness.
Real talk. So, as we close over L, I got some of the other items from the marketplace, just randomly speaking. One of the things that Oyun Marketplace is known for is gemstones, you know? And this one here is tourmaline. I was thinking about the whole concept of liberation through purification. And I want actually to go back over the way we purify these various aspects of ourselves. You said that last time, and it was so profound, you know.
I don't know if I
That you
remember
purify
what I
the ego through like devotion, or you purify
Oh,
the
yeah,
intellect.
okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But our elder sister, Mama Queen of Four, always talk about liberation through purification.
Yes.
So I have this here is tourmaline. And tourmaline, I'm reading from the description that everybody can see when you come to Oyun Marketplace and you're shopping for gemstones. There's a very definitive book that talks about different aspects of these stones. So I was just led to this one, for instance. Tourmaline. It cleanses the emotional body of negative thoughts, anxieties, anger, or feelings of unworthiness. That's powerful in itself, right? Helps in overcoming substance abuse. Releases any suicidal thoughts or self-harming tendencies. Helps treat obsessive or compulsive behaviors and relinquishes chronic worry.
Wow.
I mean, and this is all, as you said earlier at the beginning, I mean, you know, you weren't talking about the gemstones or anything in particular, but we have tools and then we have intent.
Yeah.
So with the proper intent,
And the right tools.
this becomes something that's activated, you know?
Right tools, yeah.
Tourmaline, y'all. Pretty.
That's pink quartz.
This?
No, that one.
This here? Yeah, we're gonna get to that. This rose
Rose quartz.
It's not rose quartz necessarily.
Okay.
It's not rose quartz, but it's a rose flavored. It's a bath salt. The bath salt.
Okay.
And this one is green jasper. Let me read from the green jasper. Green jasper. Let me see what green jasper. Because this is of the for the heart, you know. I just was asking about stones that help with purification. This one says it increases fertility. It's the ultimate sleep stone, allowing one to gain control over thoughts. Most rare and prized when it formed as a single green color. Has been revered since antiquity for its powers to soothe the spirit and balance obsessive tendencies and restores harmony to the emotional body. So these are tools. We talked about about this journey and about the intention and the teacher. And I'm so grateful for how you say how nature is the detour, and the teacher.
I was looking for another. Yeah, I was looking for another word. Not trial and tribulation. Is nature is the road of hard knocks. This is what I was trying to remember. It's the road of hard knocks because hard knocks is trial and error. All right, but if you got a teacher, anything, Kofi, anything, mechanic, painter. If you got somebody teaching you how to take off a starter rather than you don't know where to start, you take off the
Yeah, about your YouTube and all them things. But even YouTube could be a teacher these
That's
days.
right, that's right. You know what I'm saying? So, a teacher is a more direct path to where you need to be going.
Respect. So we want to big up our sister Queen here, and she's the founder of OU Ministries, and she is responsible for these types of tools that are in the marketplace. This one here, very popular, of course, sage, white sage, a cleanser. I would refer to this as almost like what a Lysol would do for the home. It just clean everything. So after the sage, of course, you need something like the frankincense or the I'm looking right at it, the Palo Santo or the cedar and everything to add back some probiotics. This is a spiritual antibiotic. It would do what it would do what it wanted to do, you know.
So we call that the ethereal Lysol.
The ethereal Lysol.
I was saying we're doing it the other way around. I'm calling Lysol after this.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Give this the prominence.
This is the prominent one. This is what Lysol is trying to be like, right?
That's right. Just like how the physical world is trying to be like the spiritual world. And this time, and what we have happening here in our world right now is physical trying to imitate spirit. And I would say that, like Khalid Muhammad said years ago when I was in Brooklyn, he says, nothing can happen outside the will of God. Right? Nothing can happen outside the will of God. So for everything that we're going through right now as a humanity, as a people, let's consider this for a minute.
Nothing can happen outside the will of God.
Right?
Not even a leaf, and they say that in a different way, not even a leaf can fall without the acknowledgement of it.
Yes. So to offer a sense of relief to people who are going through, because it's stressful times, even myself, I still got humanity within me, so you got family members and everything, is to understand, if we can get ourselves to a place to understand, not just that we weren't born or we can't die, but there's a capacity of the human spirit to lift itself up over this here. And now so more than any other time, because if the intent of other folks is to get your energies directed to another source and understanding that you don't have, and you thinking that you don't have no control, no mastery over this here, we got a short window of time to really elevate that essence.
It's real tough.
You know what I'm saying?
It's real tough.
And elevate ourselves. Instead, if not, we're going to be like a cork on the water, and wherever the water take us, we're going to be guided with it. Yeah.
Floating. Serious thing.
Or you could die. You can die and not be part of what's going on up top.
We could dive deep.
Yes, sir.
My brethren, what's his name? It's one of the brethren that's on the I can't think of his name right now, but y'all know who I'm talking about. He's one of the popular social media kind of gurus, but he speaks a lot of wisdom. But he always talking about, hey, what's up, deep divers? That's what we call it.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's either you dive deep, cough, or you elevate yourself higher. Either one. That you're not affected by what's happening on the surface level. That's the art. And you got a capacity to do this.
That's a jewel you just dropped it there. Either dive deep
Yeah,
or
raise
elevate.
yourself high. Be like the eagle, like him. I always use the football game as my analogy for that. You can be on the 50-yard line, looking at the game, and you think, yeah, man, I'm right to the 50-yard line. But someone in the skybox got a better view and can see the move that's coming.
That's what Asa Hillier used to say all the time, and this was introduced to me not by him, not from his mouth directly, but in a time where I was dealing with some real stressful situations, some mediation. And they said, Mama.
Kofi, you introduced me to Dr. Asa Hillier, didn't you?
I?
You did it, yeah.
What?
Right, it happened right at Bhutan too.
Wow.
Right there happened, yep.
I introduced you to Asa Hillier?
You sure did.
Wow. I take that one as a good stripe on the shoulder. I've done something good in life. That's a master teacher, man.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Wow. So they used to say, a lot of us are in the valley, so we're not getting the bridge view.
Yep.
If we got take a view from the bridge every now and then.
Bridge.
Take a
More
view
often than not.
More often than not.
More often than not.
The hawk they just played on there. More often than not, take a bitch from the view. Asar Oba is with us for a few more moments. This is Push It Tea. It's called All Push It Tea. Those of y'all from my generation, y'all know what that's a reference to, right? From Salt and Pepper, All Push It. But this is available in stock, and this goes without saying. This is a cleanser, man, all around cleanser. I have used this several times when some things felt like it was on the verge of coming, And this is very relevant. Everything we have in this shop is relevant for the times. That's what I'm grateful for. We don't have to go into no big embellishing anything. We just say this is this, and it speaks for itself. And that is that. I'll push it tea, you know what I mean? So this is available. Very good. These people are fear mongering again. It's interesting that it was made very clear by even Western, what do they want to call it, Western journalists and everything, that Africa was only 6% vaccinated and has completely averted the worst of this virus, this so-called pandemic. And then all of a sudden,
I like the sound of that.
then all of a sudden, out of South Africa, you want to tell me about some stupidness? Sure. So anyway, this is
we living in the age of information and misinformation.
true. This is Renew rose flavored natural bath salts. Benefits are to soothe the skin, relax muscles, and glowing rejuvenation of skin. Oba, I know in the last 5 years, something called self-care that we never used to hear about. We never used to hear that word song before. Has become so prominent in the world, and I think there's a positive trend.
Well, maybe powers that be didn't expect that kind of segue. You know what I mean? Thought it would have been all doom and gloom. As I say, but you say it got to be like water. If water is rushing up here and somebody stops it, you're gonna find another way to go. If you then find another way, you're gonna keep going up again until.
Water, like Lao Tzu, or either Lao Tzu or Sun Tzu said, water is the softest substance in the universe, but nothing can resist it.
Oh my goodness.
Water.
At some point.
I mean, we've been talking about water all day in many different ways, so we keep on coming back to this substance.
Yeah.
Consciousness
Consciousness is also related to water.
Just niceness, coming from
Sure.
Ghana.
Oh, wow.
I bring these from Ghana. I handpicked them myself. Batik shirt, long sleeve for the weather. It's up and down weather. So yeah, we're here, and we're here every Saturday. But Oba, as we close, there were some principles. I read this book one time called The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ. I don't know if you're familiar with that
I got
book.
it.
So I can't recall all the principles, but this is kind of blending the historiography with the esoteric. As you have done such a masterful job today. Again, we thank you for that, But there were 7, according to this story. This is supposed to be talking about the hidden years, where the years that were not documented in the Bible of this Jesus the Christ, right? And so this is at the time when he attained the title of the Christ in Egypt. And so he had to go through 7 different tests before he became known as the Logos or the Christ, you know? As people often remember, Christ is not Jesus' last name, it's a title.
It's a title, Jesus
right?
the Christ. Yeah.
So one of them was love divine, where he had to overcome lust. One of them was loyalty. One of them was courage. One of them was sure.
And the last one was death.
Yeah.
The last one is death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would like for you in your own way, not even necessarily based on the book, but in the way that you've done all afternoon, to just kind of help us again with these principles, and then cool off with this whole thing about how we purify those 4 different aspects of ourselves. Just some takeaways, some homework.
Yeah.
Because this is homework. We ain't gonna disrespect your presence and your time that you invested yesterday. And just saying, child man, this man's coming. He was, like they say, the preacher was preaching. What he was talking about? Oh no, but he was preaching a good sermon. We're not gonna disrespect your time with that. So you're gonna give us some homework. As the family make their way down here to the marketplace.
Yeah.
And take us
what I would like to share or to leave with everyone, when I was in Anglican church, confirmation class, you had to learn about the 7 deadly sins. Confirmation class, the 7 deadly sins. I was like 13, 14. And these 7 deadly sins are lust, envy, greed, gluttony, jealousy, hatred. I can't remember. Come to find out, it's the same thing with Ma'at principles, right? So, and it deals with purification. So, and everything ties in. Nothing is isolated from itself. So, if you're talking about identity and perception, right? If you're perceiving or if you are looking to identify yourself as spirit, then your perception or outlook on life cannot be on something opposite. Like in the Bible, it says, "Give unto the things that are Caesar's, and give unto the things that are God's." You know what I'm saying? So your perception has to tie into identity, but more so than anything else, when we talk about these 7 deadly sins, quote unquote deadly sins, there are things that we have to overcome, right? And we put them out. The 7 are the most major ones. But under these 7, there are other things. For example, if we talk about anger, right? Anger of itself got other things. Anger could get hatred. Anger could get even envy, but anger could lead to somebody committing a crime, killing you. So anger leads into other things, stress, everything. So although you might say 7, you got other aspects that it covers. So on the journey, and that's why the journey takes us lifetimes. So that's why even in this lifetime, even I wake up to this when during my 30s, right? And you're still learning, because he was always happening, Kofi. You have to unlearn to learn.
Alvin Toffler said the literate of the 21st century is not the one who cannot read and write, but the one who cannot unlearn and relearn.
You have to unlearn to learn.
The illiterate of the 21st century.
So it's like, I probably shared this teacher with you before. A student got the teacher to say, "Oh, why don't you teach me?" The teacher said, "Okay." And he put him to sit down and took out 2 cups. The cup he gave to the student was dirty, and the one he gave to himself was clean. So he threw in the tea inside the dirty cup. The student said, "Why are you throwing tea in the dirty cup?" So he said, "Well, you got to clean your mind. You want me to teach you, but you don't want to cleanse your mind. So it's important that you cleanse your mind." So for example, if everybody on this path got a story, especially on this spiritual journey. So when it comes to your physical journey, you know where you are in your life. You know that we're gonna get worked on for you. You know what I mean? Nobody outside you can tell you that. You know what your shortcomings are, and you know your personality type that you have. You know what you gotta do to make things work. The guy over there doing it, not necessarily you gotta do it just like him, or where he's at. You don't have to be the same place as him. So, but once you pick up that intent to change your life, to see things differently, then along comes the anointing, meaning the right things and people and places and books and ideas and thoughts to help you get to that particular way. However, in the meantime, you're going to continue to have obstacles. But these obstacles are like going into a gym, Kofi, right? And lifting weights. And if you go into a gym and you're lifting 10 pounds every day, you're most going to stop growing. But at some point, you got to build it up until you can overcome. You know what I mean? So these are things I would say to folk, man. If knowing thyself is the hardest thing to achieve, why would you think you don't need a teacher? But you're taking courses to do cosmetology, you have to do barber, you don't want to get course cut here. Right. But the toughest thing to do, we don't think we need a teacher. So what we do, we take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, read this book over here, read this book over there, but it's not enough. We're going to take you a particular place, but it's not enough. You need guidance. You need hands-on guidance to guide you. You know what I'm saying? And the other thing is this, people who are on a path, whatever path, it doesn't have to be Shatatmate, any path. In the Chinese temple, you remember them Chinese movies? Like, if you go and you learn in the Shaolin or the crane style, you can't leave that school and go and join another school and still in that school. It's two different techniques, right? Master it, and then when you're done, you can probably, if you feel like you want to do that, but in this journey, you want to mix up a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of Islam, a little bit of Yoruba, a little bit of Kemetic, and then you think we got it. But yo, man, the philosophy is so vast. It is so vast, I don't even have time to venture into anything else. Because, and not so much the philosophy is vast, but what you got to overcome, physically and mentally, it is so wide, so varied. So you need techniques, you need an approach, you need a build-up. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to jump from one horse into the other, regardless of where you're. Not to say you can't read out of books, no, I'm not saying that. However, when it comes to a direct journey and teaching and lineage, you need that there. If you listen to Hindu sages, when they talk, like for example, Paramahansa Yogananda, he can tell you, my previous teacher was this guy, his teacher was this dude, his teacher before him is like a lineage. You know what I mean? But because we find ourselves in a paradigm where our authenticity has been taken away, we gotta get a little bit of this to put a whole together. Right. But once you get to a place where that whole is like reasonably constituted, use that way of put together and dive.
Right. So yeah, you just seal it up there for me, because on one level, I would say that because, as you just mentioned, we've been scattered. So, and the truth has been scattered.
Exactly.
So part of the natural reality, just like if a cut is made in the body, part of the natural reality of the body is to immediately start to heal. So I'm gonna get the truth from Ifa, from Islam, from Shatar, Natet, from Christianity, from all of that, because it's been scattered.
It's been scattered.
But it's not because of the philosophy, looking for all the different philosophies, but the essence of it. If I'm looking for the essence of it, it feel like, like I ain't just gonna eat Indian food all the time. Sometimes I want to eat Ethiopian food.
Good. Well, I
But I love how you tie it in there. So, but at the same time, once the soul has gotten to a place of stability again,
exactly, man. You just
then you focus on one. Because then again, and it's more, even as you mentioned, nature being the hard knock way, and the teacher being the straight way to New York, it's more of a thing where now you have the Constitution to travel one way, and regardless of what way you choose, you can't mess it up.
Right.
It's all.
I mean, regardless of what way you choose, it's not one way. Like, if you want to get from Atlanta to New York, we can drive, we can fly, we can hitchhike, we can ride a bike. The whole idea is the goal
to get to New York.
So it don't matter who you choose. Maybe like reading an Indian thing that the other brother.
So how would you say then, if you say it that way, when someone said the journey is really the reward, how does that contradict what you just said?
No, because the journey is like, sometimes, back in the day, I tell my kids, you take them out for a drive. Let's say we drive into Florida. The vacation don't start when we get to Florida. The vacation starts when we go in there.
Right.
All on the way, when we stop at the rest stop, or all is part of the vacation.
Right.
You know what I mean? So your enjoyment doesn't come when you arrive.
Right.
For example, I enjoy now that I don't eat meat. That's an enjoyment because your body feels lighter, it feels different. So you have to wait until you get to a particular point to say, I've arrived. And this ties into another philosophy, calling the non-doer in action. Like when you're performing actions, don't perform actions as if you did it. You're just an instrument. So, because if you perform actions and you think that you're the doer, that means as a doer now you have an expectation. So if something doesn't happen as you planned it to be, something happens because you're living in the world of duality, you might get frustrated, you might become disappointed. But if you find a joy in making something, as you're doing it, while you're making it, and not wait until it is, okay, for example, you got this item in, right? And let's say the person who designed and made this item only finds joy when you sell it and give them the money. That's not authentic, I would think, because you got to find joy in creating the product. For example, if I'm doing a job on somebody's home or house, sometimes I'm chanting, sometimes I'm praying while I'm doing it. So eventually when I go and install this particular job, or the energy that's in it is different than if I just didn't say anything and just go and slap it up and put it on there. You know what I mean? So in this particular journey, and I'm going to get to the last question in terms of the tools, is that when we are incorporating science, right? The most important thing is that in the scriptures talk about a palette. The palette is like what Jehuti writes on. It's like a paper. That paper got to be blank. But that paper also has to be willing to absorb what is coming into it. You know, like this tissue paper, you drop ink when they just absorb it. Something like that. You have to be in a place of absorption rather than neglect, or rather than you comparing. Okay, I came from Muslim or Christianity or this culture and this here. It's okay initially, but over time you gotta give certain kind of faith in terms of what you're about to get into, because, and that's why the teacher is important, because the teacher is where you are trying to get to, right? So if somebody's ahead of you, of course, use that person to guide you to the post you're trying to get to. So, and the whole process of that is that you want to build confidence. You want to instill within yourself, because initially Kofi starting out is not confident.
But that's why I say, that's why the other part of what you said, because there are a lot of teachers that don't have the right mentality. That's why not even just the tools, but possibly even the right intention. So then what you said earlier was so important, that there's three things have to be in place. The right curriculum, the right teacher,
And the right student.
and the right student.
All three gotta be. Anyone come out
Any one of those three.
absent, nothing wrong with it. It's gonna be short circuit.
Right.
You know?
Because enough people have knowledge, and then but they expose it for
You know, that's a good thing, because a good thought. Because years ago when I was in Brooklyn, I used to go to Valentine. I was a Valentine student for years.
Yeah.
And when I left New York, I went back 5 years after. And I went into Harlem, and actually, I think Valentine had a lecture in Harlem the same night, the MC Center. So I went in there, and some of the same people, Kofi, who used to be going to Valentine for years, were still coming and seeing Valentine, right? And in my heart, I'm saying, it's like knowledge. I'm not saying don't want to see Valentine, but I think people can get constipated with knowledge.
Yeah.
Just like you get constipated with food. If you don't utilize the knowledge for yourself and for others around you, you can become constipated.
Or even with other stuff, I remember you're making me remind me of Dr. Tate, Stephen Tate.
Stephen Tate, remember that name too?
He's right
Oh,
there.
you're right. Yeah.
I remember one time as a young man, I heard something about how ganja, marijuana does mess up your seed and all them things. So I had been seeing him for years. And I went to him and I asked him, what do you think about herb? He said, well, there's nothing destructive about it, but I would have thought you've moved past from that by now. That stopped me in my tracks,
Oh, wow.
I remember as a young Rastaman, it stopped me in my track, because what he was saying is that herb is supposed to give you an idea of where you can go on your own without using it. I couldn't have been more than 26 years old. He said, I would have thought you moved past by that one. That's all he had to tell me.
Wow, interesting.
I went to ask him if it's toxic and what do you feel about it, because I'm back and forth,
Yeah.
Like Africa and
Say
other
one
people
thing,
say,
I say another
don't,
thing.
ganja is bad for you and it's this. He's like, no, none of that. I don't believe in none of that, but I would have thought you had moved past by that right now.
Punctuation point.
Serious thing, man.
Punctuation point.
Punctuation point for real. I mean, I always remember that. I go back to that often, even as you mentioned, when you think about, when you gauge yourself in terms of your development, you know what I mean?
Yes, I.
Yeah.
So tools of purification.
Yeah, man.
I start with a proverb. It's a proverb that says, I'll paraphrase it, I can't remember what in my head. To counteract a desire, a rate of vibration, use an opposite rate of vibration to counteract it, like a thought. So if you're feeling like you want to do something bad to somebody, counteract it with some healthy, good thoughts. You know what I mean? Do that over and over again until it's become perennial. But that's just a broad-based thing. The key tools, because you have 4 aspects to your personality. You got your emotions, you have your intellect, you got your willpower, and you got your actions. And so
Emotions, intellect,
willpower, actions. All human beings, all humanity. So these 4 aspects of your personality needs to be worked on and purified. And so the teachings is described or prescribed to fulfill such. So to purify your emotions, the teachings prescribes devotion. Now, I'm teaching a class right now on devotion, so it's like fresh in my mind. And devotion is one of the most powerful agencies of self-discovery.
To purify the emotions, use devotion.
Use devotion. So, for example, people sing in a bathroom. You can't sing when you sing in a bathroom, and it makes you feel good because it produces certain endorphins in the body. You know what I mean? So, devotion now, but devotion has with it different levels and steps. But the idea is you want to have devotion of purpose. What is your purpose? The purpose is being devoted to the divine. So in your devotion, practice, like you got informal and formal devotion. Your formal devotion is when you sit at your altar, you do your practice, you pour your water, your libation and all that stuff. That's a formal aspect of devotion. You're devoting yourself in that prescribed period of time to take part in this particular activity. But in the informal, and both of them inform each other. The informal devotion informs the formal devotion, vice versa, right? So the
What does the informal devotion look like?
I'm about to tell you that right now. So the informal devotion is seeing everything as divine. That's a work, that's a task, right? So by the time you get back to your altar in the evening or in the morning, and you're drawing your libation again, you are a little bit more informed. So the whole task is to do that until it becomes perennial in your thought. So every action you do, every person you meet, every experience, you're seeing it from a perspective of a divine interaction, and not so much from a dualistic, this person did this to me or somebody said this about me. It's all understanding you're throwing the divine in everything, basically. So that's the purpose or the practice of devotion, purifying the emotions, right? So you also have purifying the intellect. We purify the intellect with the scriptures, wisdom teachings. Because
Purify the intellect with wisdom.
wisdom teachings or the scriptures. So because the intellect needs to be informed. Because remember we talk about unlearning and relearning. So everything you've learned about the world, everything you've learned, come into the world, born at this particular time, I was raised by my granny, my grandparents, my mom, my dad, I got kids that went to college, then I got grandkids and I died. That's most people ideology, right? And so the purification of the intellect tells you, no, that's not it. So now you have these 2 opposing polarities in your brain, and one has to override the other one. How do you make one override the other one? By taking part in one more than the other one. You know what I'm saying? So repetition, right? Like you teach in school, repetition. So you're teaching, you're instructing.
You say repetition is the mother of knowledge.
That's right. So you got to retrain the mind to tell the mind, yo, you got your part, but the mind is because in this journey, Kofi, you even got to transcend mind.
Definitely.
Although mind is the tool that you're using to engage in the experience, you have to It's like you build a house and use hammer and nail. But you don't, when you finish building the house, you don't walk around with hammer and nail in your back pocket.
True.
You put it down.
True. You put it back in the toolbox.
So you use mind to accentuate and to gain access to certain things. But when you achieve, mind is left behind. And I'm doing it very like pragmatic, but it's work. It's work. You know what I'm saying? When you in deep meditation, you transcend mind. You gotta leave mind behind. Because mind is going to introduce you to dualistic notions and nuances and telling you it's this over here and that over there. It's up and down.
The poet Rumi said one time, die before you die so that when you die, you have already...
That's it right there.
So that's the purpose of meditation, to die before you die.
And here we die every night,
Yeah.
but we're not aware. So
But
meditation
when you
is
use the
being
word
aware of
die,
it.
I want you to help me find another word, because when some people hear the word die, it's just like, they're so finite. So
Transformation.
transform before you make this ultimate transformation.
Right. Transform.
So that when you make that ultimate, you've
Transformation.
already
You're
made
good.
it.
You're already. So we experience that every night, right? But the only thing we're not aware. So meditation helps you to become aware of that process while you're awake. You know what I mean? So, and what is death? Death is a leaving behind of this physical nature. See, meditation, that's what you do. And when you're dreaming, what do you think you're doing? You leave your guard like this. You know what I'm saying? So,
Take away yourself.
take away yourself. So the art is to get to a place where you can consciously leave this body behind. So now, in formal perspective, in interacting with people, it's like you go to a place and you go to a store, you buy something, and the person not even smiling and take your money and muttering under the breath. But you can detach yourself from that experience. You don't have to take part in it. So, man, I just come here to get some needs, they come and cook.
Right.
Whatever that person going through, you don't have to take part in it.
Right.
You can be an unwilling participant.
Or you could come and shamba, because you don't have to worry about that when you come and shamba. People gonna
Smile
smile.
and take your money.
People gonna smile with you and take your money. You know what I mean? They ain't gonna ignore you.
Yeah,
Real talk.
So we're going on to purification of the willpower. That's meditation. Meditate, meditate, meditate.
So we purify the
We purify the emotions,
emotions
the intellect,
with
the devotion.
we prefer the emotions with devotion. We purify the intellect with wisdom teachings.
Wisdom teachings.
Purify the willpower with meditation.
Right? And then the final one is your actions. And you purify that with ma'at, by doing right, by becoming a non-doer in your actions. You know, like Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was an essential non-doer. You know what I'm saying? When people ask you why she do it, love of God. You know what I'm saying? She ain't doing it because, well, I know this person hungry, but she ain't doing it because, oh, when I feed them, they're going to tell me, oh, Mother Teresa, you're so good. You took care of me. She just know it's an art. It's like, this is what you're designed to do. You know, years ago, I had another poem that I wrote called the Four Elements. I need to put my poems in the book.
Yeah, we do that, man.
And this talked about we all are like the four elements. No, I was talking about servitude or service. If the human body or personality is made up of the four elements, fire, water, earth, and air, and when we look at the highest potential of these elements, for example, fire, the sun, water, the rain, the earth, you know, and air we breathe in, what do all four elements got in common, and what do they do? What are their functions? They serve. They serve. But when they serve with no connection. Like no, the sun don't shine because Kofi said he wanted something there on the plants. The sun shines because it's his job to do. The rain falls because that is the rainfall's job to do. And the earth produces food, that's his job. So if we are made up of these four elements, Kofi, what is our job? To serve. To serve without any kind of condition. And without expecting anything in return. So you become a non-doer in your service. You're not serving because I want to get on TV or to get on the radio. You're serving because that's my makeup. I'm designed to do that.
Precisely. Ausar Oba, y'all, and We give thanks again. The Nigerian conference is
December 29th to January the 2nd. And the theme is the mysticism of the Assyrian resurrection myth. Here, Dr. Ashby Sibama will be dealing with the scriptures directly from the Medunetter and not through some Dr. Budge or somebody's book. Directly from the Medunetter, our scriptures, our myths, and coming straight into your home.
Christ consciousness in the application age. And for those of y'all tuning in on WRFG, we thank you for tuning into this series. We're not done yet because it's just that time. You know, there's so much more. There's so many angles to the triangle. And we give thanks for all the rabbit hole we make me dig today. And we are here, for those of y'all joining us live, we're here at Shamba Cultivating Ground until 6 o'clock. The fresh produce market is open on the farm outside. We're in the background, as you've seen all day, we're at OU Marketplace inside, and we're open until 6 o'clock. You know, Family Wellness Saturday is just a part of an Atlanta reality. You know, it's been institutionalized, and we're grateful for that, because the reality is the voice of the people is the voice of God, you know. So the people need, the soul is crying out for healing. So I think I could speak for both the businesses and the aspect of being grateful to be able to meet at a point of need. And that is business 101 too.
Yeah.
Business 101 is to be able to service a need, you know, and it's a beautiful need to be able to service, you know, healing and restoration. So we're there. Oh, well, give thanks.
Giving thanks. Blessing and peace, man. You know, actually, Ethiopians, you realize when you deal with Ethiopians, if they have an exchange. In my personal experience, if you give them money or they give, and they always like bow, and they give you something, that's reverence. And that's reverence in action, devotion in action, because that bowing represents some kind of mental that they're representing within the bow. They're saying, I'm accepting your, whatever they're saying mentally is symbolically represented in the bow. You know what I mean? So we have to be more reaching each other. You know, back in the 60s, we used to say, what's up, blood? What's up, brother, man? You know, we remove, although it's mundane, but we remove ourselves. We don't see each other as blood, brother, man, no more, or soul sister. We got other names we replace it with. So we got to start reversing that trend and get back to where we're seeing each other as the divine. However ugly, however handsome is the divine. Ugly from your perspective. Yeah, you might look at, let's say, octopus. Octopus is ugly, but from another perspective is beauty. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, man, more love, man. Yes, sir. More love and power.
Blessing to the family.
Take care of yourself and take care of one another.
Shout out to BV.
I will.
Boxing.
2 hours and 22 minutes.
You got edit.
But we were edited, but it was 2 hours and 22 minutes. Wisdom, teachings, you know. Much love, y'all.
Blessing and peace.
Chapter.
That takes back.